It doesn't matter whether you're a beginner who just bought your first instrument, a seasoned veteran of attempted guitar mastery, or you're someone who's thought about playing the instrument but you haven't laid a finger on anything outside of your Cheeto dust encrusted PlayStation controller. I think the guitar is the best instrument on the face of the planet. And I think that if you ever decide to learn how to play it, it'll be the best decision that you ever make in your life.
He said it. He said the video title in the video.
I'm not the first person to say this, and I definitely won't be the last, but I think it bears repeating. The possibilities are endless on the guitar. There's a million different players out there, a billion different songs, and so many different styles of music to draw inspiration from. It is physically impossible not to find something new and exciting to listen to. If you ever find yourself bored on the guitar, honestly, I think that's a skill issue on your part. If you ever say to yourself out loud that you're bored of the instrument for whatever reason, go listen to some Greg Howe or some Billy Strings, and then come back to me and say to my face that you're bored. I dare you. Because I will slap you silly. Now, playing guitar, it's not like a single-player video game where you have all these set levels and it's a sequential linear story, and once you beat all the levels of the game, then you beat the game. It doesn't work that way. Learning guitar it's like an ever-expanding web that grows outward in all directions, and with each section of that web, they have their own little pathways and progression systems. Every aspect of your skill set that you build up is its own separate entity, and it feeds into and informs every other aspect of your playing. Now, that sounds pretty long-winded, but basically, without me getting too, into my own head and Shakespearean and all that shit, basically, it doesn't matter what direction that you decide to expand your guitar playing knowledge in. You're going to get better from it. It doesn't matter whether you try to go on a deep dive into alternate picking or sweep picking or some other crazy technical, deep dive, or if you just want to learn the notes more, or you want to practice ear training, or maybe you want to practice your bending and vibrato. You are going to become a better guitar player no matter what you do. But, speaking of that, there are some things that you're going to have to keep in mind. Let's say you want to get better at improvising on the guitar. Well, I mean, that's just not a skill that's limited to how well you can play your instrument. Because there's plenty of people that have all the technical proficiency in the world that if you put on a backing track, if you put them in a jam room situation, they're not going to know what the fuck they're doing. You don't just pick up a guitar without ever having touched one in your life and say, oh, I think I want to improvise on it today. That's not how it works, unless you're like some type of superhuman savant from Mars or something like that. There are some other skills that you have to build up first. Most importantly being your note recognition skills. Put your finger down somewhere on the fretboard and be able to instantly recall what note that is without having a sheet of the fretboard in front of you. Then you need to learn how to play in and stay in time, and from that point you should probably brush up on intervals and scales, key signatures, how to play in and stay in key, and what target tones of chords are. There's even more stuff to consider, like arpeggios and triad shapes and stuff like that. All of these things are their own topics that I'm not going to delve in this video because there's a million different videos out there on YouTube that could explain those and teach you far better than I ever could. That's just me trying to help you understand what things you might have to understand before you try to learn how to understand something else on the instrument. It's not like, step by step by step. You probably could start learning how to improvise by just learning a couple scale shapes and learning how to stay in key without ever learning arpeggios or triad shapes. Now, I'm not saying don't ever learn arpeggios and triads, but I'm saying, if you're a beginner, let's just say you've been playing for, 6 months and you're like, oh, I want to try my hand at improvising, you can get away with it by only knowing a couple things. But you're not going to get better at it unless you expand your musical knowledge to other areas like that. And then, once you have a decent grasp of those different concepts and maybe a few other things, then you can start practicing how to improvise. Do you see what I'm trying to say here? It's like, you get one thing done, and then something else pops up, and then you do that other thing, and then something else pops up, and then you learn how to do that other thing, which makes you want to learn something else. and then you learn something else, and then you learn something else, and then you... Do you kind of see what I'm starting to get at here after all my rambling and yapping? If you do, great. If not, then I guess I'll just go f myself. Now, I think after all this time, the main thing that keeps me motivated to keep learning outside of the guitar being first and foremost fun as shit to play, it's the fact that you can spend a lifetime of learning it, and it still won't ever be enough. You won't even scratch the surface. Now, on one hand, that's a pretty scary thought to have, and it's something that will inherently act as a natural barrier to entry against most people, because most people nowadays, let's face it, they don't have the willpower, audacity, patience, dedication, or balls to put an effort into something over an extended period of time. But on the other hand, and forgive me if it sounds like I'm like wanking myself off here or becoming too grandiose, that same concept is what makes it so special at the same time. It's the fact that at every point in your guitar journey, every note that you play and everything that you know how to do is a one-to-one reflection of the amount of time, effort, and energy that you and nobody else has put in. Look, I know damn well I'm never going to be the best player in the world or anywhere near close to it. But on the flip side, I'm cognizant of the fact that I should be a lot farther along skill-wise and knowledge-wise than where I currently sit today. That's not me being overly critical or too hard on myself. That's just me taking a look in the mirror and being flat out honest and realistic. If I channeled a fraction of a percent of the amount of effort that I used to put into playing FUT Champs on FIFA Ultimate Team into playing guitar, I'd probably have a platinum record out by now. I bought my first electric guitar when I was 18, and after a couple years, I was confident and crazy enough to convince myself to learn Megadeth's Countdown to Extinction album from front to back. Rhythms, solos, everything. That was back in 2019. As you could tell in the intro if you recognize the riff from Captive Honor, I appear to have the capability to play at least one of those songs. I should know those parts by the back of my hand by now, realistically speaking, since 2019 was 6 years ago. However, I do not. You want to know why? Because I'm a fucking scrub, that's why. Yeah, but in all seriousness, I mean, that's how the guitar journey goes sometimes. Different responsibilities come up throughout your life and they can take you out the woodshed and throw your progress off. For some people, it can be family responsibilities with children and making sure they're happy and healthy and not accidentally killing themselves by sticking forks into electrical sockets and shit like that. For other people, maybe they're in school and they have a shitload of assignments piled up and they really need to get that degree to get their dream job that definitely won't be taken up by some trust fund baby that spent the last 4 years in college thinking of creative ways to drug women at frat parties. Maybe you're facing financial hardship and you were forced to sell some or all of your gear. That can happen to people, and it really, really sucks when that has to happen. You know, people can't help it. Life gets in the way, and, you know, sometimes you need to do stuff like that. Or maybe you're like me, and you were in a relationship with someone that had no idea how to process their own emotions, and constantly placed the responsibility of bearing the weight of their various anxieties and ceaseless negativity onto you, which in turn led to sleepless nights, borderline alcoholism, and a state of perpetual burnout, misery, and hopelessness that was so mentally and emotionally draining that could only be compared to serving a life sentence in solitary confinement in a federal state prison. So yeah, during that time in my life, I didn't really play guitar too much because I was too focused on not blowing my fucking brains out. All in all, no matter what roadblocks that you have come up throughout your life, I implore you to stay with the guitar as best as you can, and for the following reasons. Number 1. The lifetime of learning opportunities that I've alluded to throughout the video. If you're not feeling as inspired by the guitar players that you've been listening to and studying for a while now, go back and see who their influences were. It's a really quick and easy way to get exposed to new guitar players and new songs and new solos and stuff to learn from, or take it in a different direction. Are you bored of playing over blues shuffles and stuff like that? Well, try out some basic funk patterns and see how that works for you. One thing I've done throughout the years is learn various, pieces of music from video game soundtracks or different themes from overworld music in some of my favorite Pokemon games growing up. There's a lot of really cool music in, generations 3 and 5 that are pretty easy to play on a thing like the guitar where you can play like single note lines and stuff like that. It's a pretty cool ear training exercise, and I mean, it teaches you, to kind of play outside the box a little bit more because you're not focused on learning things from tabs or, tutorials of riffs online or anything like that. You got to kind of figure it out on your own and kind of make it happen because you're literally taking the sounds from an instrument that's not the guitar, and then playing it on here. Number 2, It literally gives you something to do in your free time. Human beings need shit to do in our lives, or else we'll go crazy. I'm not gonna go into the psychology behind that because, quite frankly, I don't really understand the psychology behind it. Yeah, man, if we don't get like that proverbial enrichment for our enclosures, we kind of go a little fucking crazy. So I mean, look, man, I'm not saying you have to dedicate your whole life to the guitar, but you know, if you're ever in a rut and you know, you're like, oh man, I don't have any new hobbies, I'm feeling uninspired in my life, pick one of these bad boys up, man. Like, save up some money, go get a guitar, get an amp, or just get an acoustic guitar if that's what you're into. Look, man, it's cool, and like at the very least, it'll just give you something to do at the end of the day when you have free time and you don't feel like wasting it watching Netflix or some bullshit like that. Number 3. It can provide you with a creative outlet that you never knew existed. So, for me, I was never good at physical art or drawing or anything like that when I was growing up, and I was decent at creative writing in my schooling days, but when I started to really be able to hold my own on the guitar, it really opened up a form of expression that I didn't think was possible for myself. And because of that at this point, it can almost act like a therapy session for myself when I go to sit down and play, which is an added bonus. Number 4. It's a way to connect more with the music that you love. I love the idea that I can take out a guitar and just play along with some of my favorite songs or just riff out on my own. First and foremost, it's been that feeling that I've been chasing since I was a kid of being able to, like, you know, play along with these legendary songs by my favorite guitar players. That feeling is, honestly, even now, it's, you know, you can't really beat it. I also gained that much more respect for the artist or player and appreciate the music more when one of two things happens. One, when I'm learning a challenging, you know, guitar riff or song and the rhythm player is the singer in the band, you know, guys like Matt Heafy, James Hetfield, Dave Mustaine, guys like that. Or on the flip side, when I learn guitar riffs that are so boneheaded and simple, but they are just so kick-ass in the context of the song that I get reminded that your ability as a songwriter isn't limited to your chops on the instrument either. When one of those things happens, I get so much more inspired to practice in one of two ways, either by dumbing it down or by trying to make it as technically and crazy as possible. And finally, I believe that you should either start or continue your guitar playing journey, because if you stick with it consistently, you can show and prove to yourself that you are fully capable of constant improvement as a person. Now, I know that can be a lot to unpack, and that's not really related to just guitar, but hear me out. Now, even though feelings of self-doubt and insecurity are not exclusive to guitar players and musicians, I think it's safe to say that we tend to beat ourselves up a little bit more than the rest of the population. If you ever catch yourself feeling like you're not progressing, or, you know, you're guilty for not having practice for a couple days, which, believe me, that happens to me a lot, you know, you just have to remember that you and only you are capable of pulling yourself out of that. I'm not trying to give you a lecture on self-discipline or tough love or anything like that here. I'm just coming at it from the perspective of self-empowerment. You'll overestimate what you can get done in a day, but you'll underestimate what you can get done in a week, a month, a year, or 10 years from now. Staying consistent and building your skill set on the guitar, it might inspire you to apply some of that effort and mentality to other aspects of your life. Like, you know, for example, maybe you've been wanting to learn a language for a while, or maybe you've wanted to learn how to, like, knit sweaters or some shit, I don't know. But the point stands. Any massive undertaking requires hard work, dedication, and humility because, you know, you just have to accept the fact at some point that you're just not well enough equipped to do that thing that you want to do right now. And maybe you won't be able to do that thing for another week or another month. But you have to stay consistent and you have to put the effort in. But eventually, you'll get there. Now, do us both a favor and get the hell out of here. There's a lifetime of learning and sick riffage that needs to be done.